Hello YouTube, my name is Chris and we are on the ground here in rainy Portland, Oregon. This is going to be a video with a tutorial for the Zibo Mod 737-800. This aircraft is an aircraft that I've flown quite a bit. I made a tutorial for it previously, but there's a lot that's changed with the aircraft. So I wanted to make an updated tutorial and kind of highlight some of the new features and give a good tutorial video to some people who don't know how to use this plane or how to fly it. So hopefully I can give some more information as to what to do and why to do it. So before we begin, we're going to jump inside the cockpit, and you'll see that everything is set up in a cold and dark state. So this is the Zibo Mod 3.22i. I just picked it up a couple days ago, so it's still pretty new and updated. So we are going to hop up top here, start looking at the overhead panel. So this is what you'll find when you first step into this aircraft in a cold and dark state. Everything will be off here. So first thing we're going to do is turn on the battery. We can do that by just closing that black cover, standby power to auto, closing that black cover, and we'll go ahead and start by getting the ground on ground power by going down on the ground power switch there. So there are three different types of power for an aircraft. Generally, there's your ground power, which is coming from the ground. There's APU power, which is coming from a small jet engine on the back of the aircraft. That's mainly used for in periods between when you are turning on and off the main engine power and going to ground power. And then there are the engine power. So all three of those are critical for different parts of our flight. So another thing you'll want to do early on is get the IRSs into the nav state, and that basically will tell the aircraft where we are and help navigate itself. So I'm going to start by going down top to bottom, left to right across this panel for the most part. Yaw damper right here, we won't be able to turn on until our IRSs are aligned. We'll come back to that later. As we move down here, fuel, I'm going to go ahead and turn on the wing fuel tanks like that. I'm going to come back up here, cabin utility switch and in-flight entertainment switch on. That's just for the electrical for those systems. As we continue to move down, everything looks good here. We'll come down this center. We're going to go ahead and arm the emergency lights by closing that. No smoking and fasten seatbelt signs are on, and our window heat are on. Electrical hydraulic pumps are on, and as we continue, trim air will go on. Recirc fans should both be set to auto. In this case, I'm actually going to turn off one of the packs, so we'll leave one pack on auto, we'll turn off the other one. Isolation valve should be auto, and APU bleed switch can go on. Flight altitude, so we're going to be flying at 37,000 feet today, and we're actually flying to Oakland, so it's not too long of a flight, maybe an hour, hour and a half, something like that. Landing altitude, it's basically sea level, so we'll leave that at 0. So one thing that we need to do for the lights, the different lights on this aircraft, logo light is good for when you're at night under 10,000 feet, so people on the ground can recognize the company that you're flying for. Position, strobe, and steady. This is actually a three-way switch. Steady lights will turn on your nav lights, which is the red and green lights on the wings. Position, strobe, and steady turns on those lights, but it also turns on the strobe lights as well. So when we're on the ground, we'll definitely want to turn on those nav lights or the steady position lights, and that just lets anybody on the ground know that we are in the cockpit and we are manipulating the aircraft here. Anti-collision is also known as the beacon light. It's a red light that is in the center, on the top, and on the bottom of the aircraft. We will only turn this on when the aircraft is about to be in motion. So if you are on the ground at an airport, and if you're a pilot and you turn on this anti-collision light, you'll probably start seeing the ground crew start running, because that means that the aircraft is about to start moving, and they don't want to be near the aircraft when it starts moving, because that's dangerous. Wing light, we'll never really use this unless we're in the air. It's really only used for inspecting ice on the leading edges of the wing. You would never use it on the ground because it would probably blind people in the aircraft to the right or left of you if there are any, and it's really just not necessary for anything on the ground. Wheel well light, that will really only be used in the walk around, so you can look up in the wheel well, and the pilot can look up in the wheel well and make sure everything looks good. So like I said, we're just going to go ahead and get the position light on steady right now. And at this time, let's also get the APU started here. We do that by just holding that down for a few seconds, and APU will start to come to life. It probably takes about a minute or so for that to come on. Another thing we'll do at this point is set the parking brake. Oops, looks like I knocked out the ground power. Let's go ahead and get that back on. So yeah, parking brake should have been set from the get-go. Sorry I didn't do that earlier. Alright, so another thing a lot of people say is, oh, I don't have anything on the primary flight display or nav display, it's just blank. So to do that, and it will also show an IRS error up here generally with that. So we're going to hop down here. It will even say enter IRS position. We're going to clear out that message. We're going to go to init ref. We're going to go to next page, and we'll copy one of the two GPS locations. So we'll copy that one, go back to init ref, paste it where it says set IRS position. And if you come back up here, you'll see this is all back up and running again. So that all looks good. That's what we'd expect to see. So that is set. You can see now APU is online. You can see it's saying APU. The APU generation is available, power generation. So we're going to go ahead and put the aircraft on APU power. We're going to do that by going down that one, down on that one. So you'll see now it's off of ground power, and we're on to APU power. So that is good. Everything looks good there. Now that the IRSs are aligned, we can go ahead and turn on the yaw damper, and you'll see that light go out. Probe heats will leave off until we are on engine power, so we will ignore those orange lights for now. Alright, so it's still saying fuel and electrical. We'll probably say electrical until we're on engine power, so that's okay. Fuel is fine for the time being. Next thing we're going to go down here and do is start setting up the FMS. First thing that we want to do is load up passengers and fuel in the aircraft. So we're going to do that by going to menu, extras, fuel, and you'll see here all of the different variables that we can edit are in green. So in this case, I'm going to do, let's see here, I'm going to do 20,000 pounds of payload. Center of gravity, I'm going to set to 0. And for the fuel for this flight, I really don't need that much fuel. Let me see. I'll probably put 16,000 pounds of fuel on, and that's good. So what this will do is it will automatically distribute the fuel for me. The aircraft will. So it's going to put 8 in the left tank, 8 in the right tank, and it doesn't need any in the center tank. Another place we can look at this is right here. You can see how many pounds of fuel is in each tank. It will always fill up the wing tanks first, and then it will fill up the center tank. So you always want to fill up the wing tanks first, then load up the center tank, and then burn the fuel in the opposite direction, so center then out. The aircraft is more stable when it has the weight out in the wings, so we always want to burn that fuel last if possible. So that's pretty straightforward with this menu. This is new to the aircraft, and it's pretty nice. It saves a lot of time. So next what we're going to do is get the route plugged in. So we're going to hit the route, and like I said, we're going to be flying Portland to Oakland. So we're going to go KPDX-KOAK, just like that. We're going to go to next page. The first route, the first waypoint on our route is going to be HISKU. So HISKU, just like that. The next, we're actually going to take the Q5 airway. So to do an airway, it's pretty simple. We're going to do Q5. We're going to put it in the left side over here. And then we will do HUPTU. That's what we're exiting the airway on. So HUPTU, just like that. And then we're going to be flying to SPAMY. And then we would be joining the arrival at that point. So we'll hit activate and execute. Next step, we're going to go departure and arrival. We're going to depart PDX on runway 28 right. And then we are going to fly the Mini 5 departure HISKU transition. Execute that. Going into Oakland, we want the Windsor 2 arrival. So we're going to hit Windsor 2, SPAMY, and then we're going to do the ILS 30, just like that. So when you know, a lot of people don't know what to do with the approach transitions. So the best way I've found to look at this is, unless you know you want to approach from one of these two, sometimes it helps to go to the legs page, go down and see what the last waypoint is before you enter the vector for your approach. In this case, it's Carson, and we don't need an approach transition in this case. So you can see legs page, everything is clear, no discontinuities. That's what we want to see. That's perfect. So we're going to go ahead and hit init ref again. So this is where we're going to start the performance initialization of the aircraft. So because we already put in the fuel and gross weight, the payload weight, that's crucial for this step. In this part, we can just hit this button and populate in the data that we want. Fuel reserves, we're going to have 4,800 pounds of fuel. Cost index, I'm going to go 25. Generally, this number can be anywhere between, I believe, 1 and 200. A cost index of 1 is going to have a pretty steep climb rate out. 200 is going to have a slower climb rate out, but you're going to be going faster. Really, a good number for this would be maybe 25. That's what I always go with in this aircraft. Cruising altitude, we're going to hit 370 for this flight, just like that. Might give you some constraints and whatnot. We'll execute that. Everything looks good there. We're flying in the US, so transition altitude will be 18,000 feet. We'll go to N1 limit. So as you can see right now, it's going to default to a 97% N1. We really don't need that much thrust to take off. Portland has a fairly long runway, and we want to, even though this is a virtual airplane, we want to maybe reduce wear on the aircraft and reduce the fuel burn. So I'm going to go ahead and just, we're going to derate this takeoff to about 46, I think would be a good number for this. So you can see that takes it down to 92%, which actually saves a lot of wear on the engine for this. We're going to go to the takeoff page. So takeoff, we're going to go flaps 5, pretty standard takeoff flaps. Center of gravity will populate. That'll give us our trim number. We'll come back to that in a moment. V1, V-rotate, V2 speeds are all populated here. Our rotate speed is going to be 130. Next thing we'll do, so set the trim 3.35. To do this, we're going to come down here and look at these numbers right here. So right now it's set on about 5. I'm going to go down to 3.3 approximately. I would imagine it'd be about right there. So that's very important. We want to set the trim. So next thing, we're pretty much done with the FMS stuff down here. So what I normally do is I take this number V2, add 10 to it, so it'll have 149, and that's what I'll start by putting in the MCP up here. So we're going to go 149 up here, just like that. Alright. And we can put on the left flight director, right flight director, just like that. And I'm going to go ahead and set these to the VOR modes. And we'll arm the auto throttle. The next thing I'll do is I'm going to put the heading to the runway heading. In this case, we're going to be departing 28 right, which is 283. So I'll just dial this back and set it on 283, just like that. Altitude, we're not going to be flying with any ATC today, so we're going to go all the way up to our cruising altitude of 370, like that. Perfect. I'm going to be flying the departure, so just to make it easy on myself, I'm going to hit LNAV, and I'll let the plane manage my climb as well, so we'll hit VNAV. So this whole tutorial is just about what the plane can do, so we will fully automate our climb out procedure here, so you can see how the plane will do that. There's been a lot of improvements in how this plane handles from the last tutorial that I made. Okay, so let me change something here real quick. Alright, so now we can set the auto brakes to RTO, and while we're at it, let's go ahead and squawk mode Charlie. Down down here at the transponder. That basically just tells ATC, shows them our position and our altitude and speed readings. So it's important for them to know if they're working on separating traffic. Alright, next thing I'm going to do is plan my pushback. I'm going to go better pushback, and it looks like I've already planned this pushback before, so that looks good.
Grounded cockpit, plan acknowledged. Call me through the menu when you are ready.
Alright, let's get the
Grounded
pushback
cockpit,
truck on the way.
tow is driving up.
Next thing we'll do is get the nav display how we want it. Right now it's only displaying traffic. I want to display weather. VORs might be nice. Airports might be nice. I don't really want waypoints, but I could have those. Data, I think it clutters the display a little bit, but it can be useful information at times, but I'll leave that off. Everything else, that's pretty much all I need on that screen. So that is looking good. Let's go back up top here, just make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Everything looks good. We want to make sure that we turn this pack off before we begin the engine. So in a second she will tell us that she is connected and ready for pushback and to release the parking brake. At that point we'll release the parking brake.
Okay, all doors and hatches are closed. Ready to connect.
Alright, so she's going to connect, and then she'll ask me to release the parking brake. We'll release the parking brake, and she'll tell me it's okay to start engines, and we'll go through that startup procedure. So I'm just going to double check a quick checklist here. So, flight plan is filed, fuel is loaded, payload is loaded, battery guard is closed, standby power guard is closed. Left center fuel pump as needed, we don't need that. The other fuel pumps are on, APU is started, APU gen is on, position light is steady. I'm going to go ahead and get the anti-collision light turned on now since we're about to move. Let everybody know.
Tow connected and bypass pin inserted. Release parking brake.
Alright, we're going to release that parking brake. Get the pushback started.
And you may start engines.
Okay, perfect. So what I'm going to do now is hop up here and we're going to turn off the pack like that. And now we are going to start the second engine first in this aircraft. So we're going to do that by putting the engine start on ground. We're actually going to come down here and watch our N2 rise. We're going to introduce fuel to the engine when N2 hits 25%. So right now it's at 15%. And we'll introduce fuel. As we can see up here, N1 is rising, engine temperature is rising, so that looks like a good engine start to me. Alright. Once engine 1 stabilizes there, it's pretty stable. I'm going to go ahead and get engine 1 started up. So we're going to watch this, get that up to 25%, and then we will introduce fuel to the engine. %. Let's go ahead and add that fuel now. All right. Looks like we have 2 good starts on our engines.
Operation complete. Go ahead and set the parking brake.
Parking brake is set.
Disconnecting tow. Stand by.
Alright. So we're going to go up here. Now we can see engine 1 and engine 2 gens are available. We're going to go ahead and put those on the bus. So engine 1, engine 2, you'll see APU gen is now off the bus. So what we can do now, we're going to go ahead and get the probe heats on. We're going to go ahead and get the engine bleeds on, APU bleed off, and we'll go ahead and put the packs back on auto. So the packs are basically air conditioning, pressurization, whatnot. So now everything is off. APU is no longer being used for power or for airflow. So we're going to go ahead and power off that APU by just switching that switch up to off, and that's pretty much it. And you'll see that APU light go off here. I'm going to go ahead and turn on overhead lights.
And bypass pin has been removed. Hand signal on the left. We'll see you next time, and have fun up there.
Alright. So as she moves out of the way, we are pretty much ready to taxi. We're going to be taxiing off to the right here, and basically going down along runway 28 right all the way down to the end. Normally they'd probably give you 28 left for this departure, but I'm just going to go ahead and do 28 right. Alright, and she is off and giving me hand signals. She is saying it's okay to move now. So I'm going to go ahead and get the taxi light on to dim. We don't need the bright taxi light during the day. So I'm going to get that on to dim, and we're going to go ahead and get the engine starts over to continuous. Just like that. Everything else looks good up here. I don't see any other issues. Yep, everything looks good. Actually, one last thing, I'm going to set the flaps to 5 to get those started. Alright, we should be ready to roll. I'm going to go ahead and release the parking brake. And let's begin our taxi down to runway 28 right. Alright, and as we approach the end of the runway, one thing that we would probably have is ATC would clear us for takeoff. We're going to go up here and we'll rotate this switch over to position, strobe, and steady. What that will do is turn on the flashing white lights on the wings and let everybody know that we are ready for takeoff and that we are cleared for takeoff. Alright, everything else is looking pretty good. Pressurization is all set, packs are on the way we want. So we are going to line up on the runway.
Approaching 28 right.
Alright, as we line up, we'll go ahead and get our landing lights on. Taxi light is off.
On runway 28 right.
And after we are lined up and straight on the runway, we're going to hit this N1 button right here, which will give us that 92% of N1 for takeoff. Rotate. Alright, when we are off the ground, gear is going up. We will go ahead and get our autopilot turned on now. Alright, gear is up and off, so let's go ahead and hit that landing gear switch to be in the off position. The aircraft is now pitching down in order to pick up speed here. So we're going to go ahead and go flaps 1. See the flaps coming in right here to flaps 1. And we'll go flaps 0. You can see it automatically is managing my speed for me, going up to 250 knots. And as we approach 250 knots, you'll see that the plane is going to start climbing more, trading that airspeed for altitude. Alright, we're getting a pretty good climb right here, about 4,300 feet per minute. We're fairly light, so that's why we're getting such a good climb rate. If you had a really heavy aircraft, you wouldn't be getting such a great climb rate. Alright, everything is still looking good up here. We're actually going to go ahead and get our engine switches back from continuous into auto. The reason to put them into continuous is maybe not necessary, but what it will do is if you have an engine start failing or something, it will try to reignite the engine automatically, or continuous start. So it'll help prevent an engine flame out, is my understanding of how that works. So as you can see, we passed 10,000 feet. Let's go ahead and get our landing lights off, like that. You can see the aircraft is speeding up to our climb rate of 271. We can see our climb in here. If we hit the climb button, it'll go 271, and when it hits about 30,000 feet, it'll go switch over to Mach 6.6. Our cruise, you'll see our cruise, since we're over 30,000 feet, it's going to be Mach 7.8, which is pretty standard for a 737 at cruise. And our descent is pretty much the same as our climb. Alright, and we have just crossed 18,000 feet. I'm going to go standard barometric pressure and hop up here and go to fasten seatbelt sign and switch that off. Just like that. Alright, I'm going to stop the video now, and I will start the video again when we are approaching top of descent to give a briefing of what needs to happen before we can begin our descent. So we'll see you then. Welcome back, everyone, and we are approaching top of descent, as you can see here on our navigation display or on the progress page of the FMC. So what we need to do for that is we need to see how far we can go down. Let's see here, probably 5,000 feet is the bottom altitude that we can go to. So we're just going to adjust that down to 5,000, like that. So on the approach, we want to look for the lowest altitude before the actual ILS approach itself, which is 2,000. So that's 5,000. So what this will do is, as you can see, it's starting to reduce the speed down to our descent speed of Mach 6.6, and it'll start descending us down shortly after, down to 5,000. So when you set 5,000 here, VNAV will automatically start descending, but it will not go lower than 5,000 unless we tell it to. So pretty simple stuff here. Another thing to maybe consider doing at top of descent is to pull the weather, make sure you're still good. So in Oakland, weather is wind is 270 at 5, so runway 30 will be perfect for us. Only 6-mile visibility due to haze. Scattered clouds at 20,000, broken at 25,000, that shouldn't be a factor. And our altimeter is 3001, so let's go ahead and get that set up right now, like that. That will allow us to descend via the field elevation there, or field altitude altimeter setting. Another thing to do here would be to set our auto brakes. I'll go ahead and set those to 2. You know, for an auto brake setting, there's 1, 2, 3, and max. Max, I don't think you would ever need to use. 1 might be good for a really short field, or for a really long field. Sorry, like maybe Denver. One thing about Denver too is that the terminal's towards the end of the runways generally that you're landing on. So you can minimize your taxi time by setting like an auto brake of 1, or just leaving it off and manually braking, just so you can get to the end of the runway a little bit faster. Generally speaking, it's probably not a good idea to float down the runway and land halfway down the runway, but you could always, once you're on the ground, you can do an extended rollout, so using a lower auto brake setting. 3 might be a good one for a really short field like John Wayne or Burbank. Those 2 come to mind that you might want to use auto brake of 3, but 2 is good for most places. Oakland is a fairly long runway, but I don't want to use up the whole runway either. So we're going to go ahead and set that to 2. Welcome back, pilots, and we are just descending through 11,000 feet right now. So as you can see, VNAV on the plane is reducing our speed down to 240 knots. Another thing that we will do in preparation for our approach is to get the ILS set. So because we are kind of committed to runway 30 now, which the winds still favor, we're going to get this set up. So the ILS frequency is 108.7. So we're going to set that up in the nav radio here, 108.7, 108.7. So there is another part here. Let me go ahead and get the landing lights on since we are descending through 10,000 feet. And as you can see, I did put the fasten seatbelt sign on at 18,000 feet. So as we continue to slow down and during our descent here. So anyway, like I was saying, the ILS, there's a little bit more involved than just putting in the nav frequency. We also need to set the forward course. So for runway 30, that is 296. So I'm going to go ahead and get that dialed in here. Basically, it tells the aircraft not only where the ILS will tell the aircraft where the runway is in relation to itself, but it needs to know what the course of the runway is. So that's what this does for us. So 296 over here as well. And the reason I set it up on both sides for both nav radios and both course knobs is in case we do need to perform an auto land or like a Cat 3 approach or something like that, basically using the autopilot to descend down to the absolute minimums and fly itself. We would like to get both autopilots engaged on the approach. I'm not sure that we'll need this on this one. We do have 6-mile visibility because of the haze, but 6 miles should give us plenty of visibility to the runway. So one thing that I would normally do when I'm landing this plane, is, especially in this case since we're going to have to fly what's called a downwind, so we're flying past the airport and basically coming back, what I'd probably normally do is if there was ATC's request, oh yeah, we got a visual on the runway, and they would clear me for the visual approach, and I just take manual control of the plane and fly it down myself. In this case, I'm not going to do that. I want to demonstrate how to use the ILS with the airplane. The ILS is a very useful tool with this airplane. It allows us, it takes a lot of work off the pilots in order to get lined up on final approach. So because there's no ATC online, part of the approach is to fly a vector. After Carson, flying a vector, and then normally ATC would give us descent instruction and heading instruction after that, normally to intercept the ILS. Because we're not flying with ATC, we're going to need to do that ourselves. So I will be kind of giving myself a vector, and I'll show you kind of what I'm doing just so it makes sense. I'm going to move in the nav display here, so you can see the runway is right over here to our right, about maybe 12 miles away, 13 miles away. We might be able to see it out the window through the haze. Not sure I can see it very well because of the haze, but we'll definitely see it when we're flying by it, because we should be within 6 miles. One thing that I am using with this aircraft is the AudioBird XP sound pack for this aircraft. It adds so much realism. It's amazing what just a sound pack can do for the realism of an aircraft. So that is a very good add-on to have with this. For my simulator, I'm using xEnviro to make the weather for me, draw the weather. Very happy with that. Although some people, are not very happy on how often it updates. When it does update, it does offer a lot of new features and performance improvements and visual improvements. So that's really nice. Really happy that I have that add-on. It's way better than any of the other weather add-ons that I've used in the past, as far as drawing realistic weather. And one thing that I like about xEnviro is the draw distance is amazing. You know, you can draw weather out for 100 miles or more if you wanted to. You know, of course that comes with a performance hit, but it's nice being able to have that option. As we can see here, we're going to be flying to HUPTU, then Alex, and then Carson. And then although this kind of pink line exists here, we're not actually flying with that pink line. It's going to be turning us out on a vector out this way. What we'll probably do though is we'll kind of loop ourselves back and come back and intercept the ILS at Wuvon. So Wuvon and Maito here on the approach, they both altitude is 2,000 or above, so we'll probably descend down to about 3,000 feet and intercept Wuvon at about 3,000 feet. So we'll probably hold at about 5,000 until Alex. I'll probably drop down to 3,000 after that, and so we can begin our approach. Alright, I'm going to begin the turn now. So I did that by just hitting heading select, which takes it off of the LNAV mode. We'll begin turning the aircraft using the heading knob. So at this point, autopilot is still on, auto throttle is still on, but I am manually manipulating the speed, direction, and altitude and descent rate of the autopilot. So not hand flying it yet. Like I said, I probably won't turn off the autopilot until we are established on the ILS, just to give kind of an example of what people should expect with the ILS. Important thing about the ILS, you don't want to, when you're intercepting the ILS, you don't want to do it at an extreme angle, and by extreme I mean probably more than a 45-degree angle. 2,500. And the reason for that is it just can't do it. The more shallow you intercept the localizer, the better, generally speaking, for the smoothness of the interception. So you can see here's the ILS frequency right here. You can kind of see the edge of it. I'm actually going to go ahead and turn about 10 degrees to the right here, 210 degrees. So let me zoom this out just a touch. If I zoom in here, you can kind of see here's the runway, here's the ILS, just kind of goes out in a straight line. I'm currently flying perpendicular to the ILS. I'm going to want to turn and intercept the ILS at an angle. I'm actually going to set up that turn right now. So I'm going to go to Wuvon, which is approximately, we'll just turn 280 degrees for that. And we are at 3,000 feet, which is where I wanted to be to intercept Wuvon. I go a little bit more, maybe 285 degrees, like that. Just want to get that. What we can also do is go in here and select Wuvon and go direct to that. That's another method. Another thing, if you're curious, like you don't know exactly how far away you are from the field, we can look down here. It will tell us the ILS shows us actually we're 15.6 miles out. So at about 12 miles out, I'll probably reduce speed to 180 approximately. What we're waiting for is, so here we have the localizer alive. It's not intercepted yet. So what I'll do is I will hit the VOR localizer button. So as the localizer starts moving towards the center, we will intercept it as soon as it kind of reaches the center, and you'll see it will turn the aircraft. There it goes. It's actually intercepting it right now. It's turning the aircraft to intercept the runway, which is right here. What we'll do now, because we have the glide slope alive, is to hit the approach button, which will arm the glide slope right here. It's going to hold 3,000 feet, but once we intercept the glide slope, it will it'll turn glide slope to green, and we'll start following the glide slope down to the runway. So we're about to do that right now. I'm going to go ahead and go flaps 5 and reduce our speed down to 180 knots. Since we are on final approach, what I'm going to do is set our engine starts to continuous, like that. I'm going to arm our auto brake like that. So we are exactly 10 miles away from the runway right now. I'm going to go ahead and get our final approach speed set. So we're going to do a flaps 30 landing. Flaps 30 is a good setting. Flaps 40 provides a little bit more drag than airlines generally want, puts more stress on the equipment. Flaps 40 is good for short runways, but in our case we have plenty of runway. Flaps 30 will be good, so it's 135. We're actually going to put in the VREF, or approach speed, plus 5. So we're going to put in 140, like that. And at this point would be a good time to put the gear down. I'm going to go ahead and put gear down. And we're going to go next flap setting here, which I believe is flaps 10. Go ahead and flip off the auto throttle. Take manual control of the throttles. We're going to go flaps 25. And flaps 30. Start put a little bit of engine power in, start taking control of that. And our approach is looking really good right now. No complaints on our approach. Let me go ahead and spin the heading bug over to runway heading, just in case we need to do a go around. So we're at 1,000 feet. I'm actually going to flip off the autopilot there, like that. Right now I'm manually flying the plane. I use a SciTech yoke and SciTech rudders, so that's what I'm using right now to stay aligned with that runway.
30.
Our speed is really stable. We're right on the glide slope. We're right where we want to be. Right now we have a visual with the PAPI lights, which are the white and red lights. We want to see 2 white and 2 red. 3 red means we're too low. 3 white means we're too high. We're actually gonna get a little bit too high right now. So just making little trim wheel adjustments, staying right on that glide slope if we can. Alright, we are going to be landing.
100. 50, 40, 30, 20, 10.
I took power out there. Now we're just going to float it. Alright, we're down. Reversers are out. Trying to maintain that center line the best I can. Alright, 60 knots. Manual braking. Alright, as we vacate the runway, we're going to go ahead and get our landing lights turned off, taxi light on, like that. Auto brake can go off, and we are going to retract our flaps and speed brakes. So overall, that was a great landing. Everything went really well. We maintained the glide slope on the way down. I think we hit the speed right on. Floated it a little bit, but we got off with plenty of runway left, so that's not going to be a problem. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and get the engine starts back over to auto, like that. And I'm going to go ahead and get the APU fired up here by just holding down the start for a few seconds, like that. Alright, so now I'm just going to go ahead and taxi to the terminal. Another thing that we can do now is get the strobe light off. We're going to go over here and just switch that over to steady. Generally you would do that with the landing light. Alright, and our APU is online. We're going to go ahead and switch over to APU power, left and right. And we will put in the APU bleed and turn off the engine bleeds like that. So the APU is powering our packs, which we can get one of the packs turned off. Probe heats can go off at this point, like that. No longer need those. As we approach the gate, I'm going to go ahead and turn off the nose wheel taxi light. We really don't need that on anymore. We're just blinding the ground agent that's here, the marshaller. I'm just going to follow this in. He'll start telling us where to go, how to straighten up. Alright, and we are here. I've set the parking brake. Engine 1 can go off, engine 2 can go off. We'll turn off fasten seatbelt sign, anti-collision light can go off. We'll leave the position lights on. And that pretty much does it. We can go ahead and put it over to ground power now if they have that available for us. And that's pretty much it. Our passengers are going to start deplaning, and that concludes our flight. So if you do have any other questions about flying this airplane, I can leave them in the comments. I can try to help. If it's technical questions, if the plane isn't working as as I'm showing you in this video, it could be something wrong with your installation or the way you installed the plane. So I would recommend contacting the Zibo Mod or posting the Zibo Mod forum, and they should be able to help you out. But if you do have any other questions, like I said, feel free to comment below. So thank you for watching. Hopefully you learned something about this plane, and I really love this plane a lot, and I'm glad to see other people flying it. So take care. Have a great day.